We are out this week and next week for Easter recess. We go back the week after. The primary thing that has to be done shortly thereafter is to work on the budget resolution. That's the blueprint to spend the money through the 12 annual appropriation bills that actually write the checks that come after that. The budget proposal from President Obama would spend $3.8 trillion of your taxpayers' monies over the course of the next fiscal year. Now, the President's budget does not automatically become the spending blueprint. His proposed budget goes to the House Budget Committee, the House and Senate Budget Committee. They work on it, they make adjustments, they grind it out. In theory, they pass something across the floor. We wind up in Conference Committee, something that's not been used a lot lately, to work out our differences between the bills. And in theory, that then becomes the actual spending pattern. But the President's budget proposal is a very insightful document just to see what his or her mindset is and where the White House wants to drive the agenda for the next year, even if it doesn't become the final document. President's proposal, $3.8 trillion. Biggest federal spending budget on an annual basis ever. It would be, if it passes in the form the President wants it, by his own analysis, would be about $1.4 trillion out of balance. Yeah. $1.4 trillion more spent than taken in. So add that to the national debt. That comes on top of this year's $1.5 trillion deficit. That's a projected number when the books close at the end of September. And that was after last year's $1.3 trillion deficit. So if the President's budget numbers hold up, he's projecting in his first 3 years in office, we'll add $4 trillion to the national debt. Now, he inherited a $10 trillion national debt, and in 3 years it will have increased by 40%. Now, I address that to my younger taxpayers in the back of the room, because you get to take care of that for the rest of your lives, in addition to the time that we've had and will spend on this earth. When you have the Speaker of the United States House and the President of the United States both wanting the same thing, and wanting it more than anything else. You see, Speaker Pelosi, I really believe, is now concerned about her spot in the history book. First woman speaker in the history of the country. That's a historic notation in the book. I agree. But passing national health care, nationalizing the system, remaking health care, is to her just as important a social agenda as being the first lady speaker. So this is kind of a crusade sort of an issue. This is not just a policy issue. This is something near fanatical. I cannot give you specific examples, but I will tell you that I watched my Democrat friends, and all the Republicans voted no. Ultimately, 34 Democrats voted no. My neighbor over on the east side of the state, Dan Bourne, was consistently no. But I watched the so-called Blue Dog Democrats be worked and maneuvered around on the floor. You'd have thought it was a bunch of blue heelers working herd steers. Sorting, culling them off, working on them individually. The intensity of the discussions, just watching them on the floor. Now we'll see if extra bridges turn up in districts. We'll see if people who are defeated suddenly get appointed this fall for having switched from a no to a yes. We'll see if people suddenly get nominated to be ambassadors. We'll see. I can't say with certainty that that will happen. I can't say with certainty that anything in particular was offered. I will just tell you I've been a part of the process long enough that the pressure was intense. I think the increase of the national debt by 40% in 3 years has gotten the attention of all my colleagues. But just for a little background, the biggest challenge in the 1990s was a combination of 9/11 and the beginning of the War on Terror, and the fact that for 4 years we got the federal budget back into balance. And for my younger listeners, bear with me for just a moment. From 2000 back to 97, we actually were in the black. It's hard to believe. You have to go back and look at the books, but we really were in the black. And we got there by reducing the rate of growth of spending, encouraging the economy to grow, and we grew ourselves into balance. One of the biggest problems that we faced at that point was when we got into balance and we had extra money, the surpluses averaged about $150 billion a year, was it was awfully hard to tell my university presidents and my mayors and my community activist groups when they would come to me and say, you got all this extra money, you're going to apply most of it to the national debt, let's peel just a little bit off for one more research project, let's peel just a little bit off for one more good project, let's peel just a little bit off for one more senior citizen center, let's peel just a little bit off for all these good things. Younger voters, one of the biggest challenges that an elected official has is there's a tendency, and we really want to do this, and it sounds kind of interesting to say. The fact of the matter is we want to do what you want us to do. We want to respond to your agendas. And discretionary spending took off. Now, we stayed in the black. We would have never gone back into the deficit. We would have still run 2/3 of the budget would have been, the extra money would have been surplus and paid on the national debt. But the firm grip on the spending valve got loosened because people were saying, you got extra money, let's do some good things. Let's do some infrastructure. And then the thing that drove us into the ground was 9/11. We wrote a $40 billion check to put New York City back together 2 days after the plane attacks. We launched into a war on terror. And you spend the money you got to spend in a war to win. You don't. You spend what you've got to spend to win. And that drove us into deficit. Now, in the time that we've been out of power, federal spending's exploded. I mean, the president's increased spending at, 17-18% across the board. The only two areas in the president's budget this coming year where they have proposed reductions is in the farm programs. Take money out of direct payments, take money out of crop insurance, take money out of conservation, and they want to cancel weapons programs at the Department of Defense. Otherwise, everything else goes up. So short answer is, my weaker colleagues got culled in 06 and 08. The folks who've survived the last two election cycles that I served with on the R side of the room, I think clearly understand what the problem is. If we get control, and in some ways having a president who is philosophically dramatically different than us will be great. He'll go after our spending priorities, we'll go after his spending priorities, and if we spend less on everything, the federal debt's going to be better for it. So short answer is, yeah, we learned our lesson the hard way.